When it comes to trimming brisket, there are a few core cuts that I make. Now friends, the biggest mistake that I see people make when trimming brisket is they start trimming here and then they start trimming there and then they go over here and then you're kind of all over the place, and before you know it, you've really just hacked up the brisket. The key with a good brisket trim is you want to keep the cook in mind, meaning when you trim a brisket, every cut, every slice, every piece of fat or meat that you remove has a purpose. You want to know why you're removing it. So I take the Mohawk off, which is this right here. I'll show you what I do in a second. I take the Decal off, which is right under here. And then here's the flat side of my brisket, otherwise known as the lean. I make a couple key cuts on the lean side, helping to make our brisket aerodynamic. What you don't want during the cook is you don't want your flat to curl. So I'll show you how we mitigate that here in a second with those cuts. And then really guys, all I do is I start to just slowly and methodically remove the fat off the surface. We've all heard we want a 1/4 of an inch thick fat cap, and you might in some cases. But in other cases, you might not. I don't think the 1/4 of an inch is the gold standard or the law. I think it's just a good rule of thumb to shoot for. But if you have a cooker that cooks way hotter, or the heat comes from a different spot on the cooker, or your cooker is highly convective, I don't know, maybe you want to leave a little bit more or take a little bit less. But for the purpose of this video, 1/4 of an inch is fine. So in no particular order, I'm just gonna trim through this brisket. I won't go game speed. I'll go a little slower. That way I can explain exactly what I'm doing. So first, we have this Decal here, and the Decal needs to go. Now, the difficulty is I'm gonna have to trim this backwards, I guess, because the camera's on that side, I'm on this side, and I want you to see what I'm doing. So let me attempt to trim this backwards. Here's the Decal. Now, some people, they will just come in here and totally remove the Decal out. Depending upon where the Decal is, I might do that. A lot of times the Decal will be tucked up underneath the point here, and it'll make the point higher so your brisket doesn't sit even. This Decal, on the other hand, is just kind of out on the flank. It's really on the edge. So I'm just gonna come through like this and cut it. And I'm gonna bring my cut all the way across the point because I want this to lay flat. If you can see how it's flat now? And then I never take a straight cut. I always go down and round. I round all my cuts, meaning we take this and we go around. As you can see, Decal is gone. Let's flip it over and let's remove the Mohawk. This is the Mohawk. Again, I'm gonna find it hard to believe that this is the first barbecue video you've ever watched in your entire life, specifically about brisket. If it is, this is a glorious moment that I get to share with you. But most of you have seen people trim a brisket. So I'm not really gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna talk through all of the echo chamber of tips that really everyone says, like this fat in the Mohawk won't render and all that stuff, because we've all heard it. Again, if you want the deeper details, go watch my How to Trim a Brisket masterclass. So the Mohawk is facing you guys. This needs to go, and I'm extremely aggressive with my Mohawks. I go way underneath and I come out and I take all that fat underneath. I take all that meat on top. I do something special with the Mohawk, but again, we don't need it. So here's the Mohawk right here. And then this is the point side. This is the point. This is the lean. Right where the point meets the flat, just about, there's a big old hunkin' chunk of fat right in and around here that we want gone. So what I do is I come down a 1/4 of an inch, right about here, and I dig out this chunk of fat. Now what I did is I set myself up for success because I'm gonna go right back up towards the Mohawk, up this way. And that's gonna allow me to know or gauge how deep I wanna go underneath the Mohawk because we just set our 1/4 of an inch. So all I'm gonna do, guys, is I'm gonna go up this way. Underneath the Mohawk, real nice and deep, and I bring it all the way up, and remember, I go down and round. Like so. This is that Mohawk. Great meat in there, great fat in there. We just don't need it for this cook. Now that looks really good. I'm happy with that. Now what I'm gonna do is, there's still too much fat in here that we don't want, so I'm just gonna get underneath at this angle. Perfecto. So we did Decal, we did Mohawk. Now I'm going to make my straight cuts on both sides. Straight cut number 1. Now, see that? I took this straight cut off. I went right from the back of the point all the way down. I exposed all this meat underneath, and then I also straightened the brisket up. I'm gonna do about the same thing on this other side, except on the other side, I'm not gonna go as high up on the brisket. On the other side, I'm actually gonna try to keep as much fat as I can going up towards the point, and I'm gonna try to just snip off just towards the edge of the lean on the other side. But this is a really important cut because it's gonna, again, it's gonna straighten up our brisket, but then also it's gonna show us how much fat we have left in this region. And then from here, you can gauge if you wanna remove any more of this fat or if you wanna keep it. I like how it feels, so I'm just gonna touch it up just a little bit. Don't second guess yourself. Trust the cuts that you make. If you were wrong, you're wrong, but what you don't want to do is triple and quadruple guess yourself, and then you just end up doing more harm than good. So if you end up leaving too much fat, then, well, chalk it up as a learning lesson and keep her pushing. All right, so that cut's done. Now you're looking at the opposite side. And guys, this opposite side, it's really janky. The butcher scalped this in here, and so it's a little bit oxidized, and it's just not good because it's so far in, they scalped it so far into the meat that if I were to take that scalp off, like right here, I'm gonna cut a quarter of my brisket off if I were to try to remove that. So we're gonna have to find a way to keep as much of the meat as we can while neutralizing that scalp, because if I were to just leave it, this is 100% gonna pool up, and then all that's gonna happen is we're gonna have one big pool of fat sitting here and moisture, and we're not gonna be able to set the bark. Again, you know, the art of trimming brisket is every brisket's different. So like I said earlier, if you're able to follow some core steps, then you're able to not have to kind of guess when you're doing stuff, when you're thrown a little wrench. So I'm going to, before I cut that side, I'm just gonna start to shape up my point. I want this point to be round, and right now it's just kind of jagged and uneven, and there's some fat pockets. So I'm just gonna slowly start to come around and round this out like this. See how I rounded that? All right, let's take this other straight cut. There's no real perfect way to do it, again, because it has this really bad scalp from the butcher, but I'm just gonna come right on the outside, and I just lay my knife flat and I bring it around like this. This is the flat, and I'm gonna come about 3 inches up, somewhere in there, and I'm just gonna take that much off there. And then now I'll just slowly start to trim some of this fat off the top. I like using this knife because you can get the long strokes, and all I do, guys, is I just work towards the outer edge of the brisket like that. You know, if you go here and then you go there and you go there, it's more prone to get those pockets of pooling. And again, guys, I don't want you to worry about scalping the brisket. If you scalp the brisket, it's okay. It's life. What I'd rather have you do is remove too much fat than leave too much fat, and then just, like I said, chalk it up as a learning lesson. Same deal with the point side. All I'm gonna do is come from the middle of the point and just work my way around this fat cap, moving slowly and methodically. And then I'll just kind of run my fingers through here. You see that hump that it's created? And then I'll just start to pull fat off this hump. All right, so I'm almost done with this trim, and I have to make a game time decision. I have to decide, do I want to make this a super skinny, narrow brisket and cut this, like literally cut this entire portion of the brisket off to try to maintain the integrity of the rest of the brisket, or do I want to try to salvage it? And I don't have an answer. I think I'm just going to figure it out as I go, and you guys will watch in real time. All right, there it is, folks. I decided to leave the scalp, and then I just cut this whole side off. Normally, I don't advise removing this entire side. Like I said, I make this cut here that you can see, and then I'll leave the rest of this side with the fat on it, not exposed. I like to protect this entire side. Now, again, remember on the other side, I do remove this entire side because it has so much of this fat up in here. But when we flip it, the opposite side of the Mohawk, I like to keep as much fat around this point as I can, because that's where those money slices are going to come off of. And then I'll just remove, I don't know, a hand's width of meat on this side. However, because we had that bad scalp, what I basically did is I cut and I rounded this edge off. It exposed this meat out here, but my hope is that we'll be able to set bark, and then the fat is going to run off because I cut it at this angle. So the fat's going to try to pull, but it'll run. So we'll see if that works. But I'm pretty happy. I'm just going to go through and slowly start to remove kind of this lingering fat to get it where I want. And then I'll show you how to make it aerodynamic, and then we'll season it and we'll get it going. All right, fam, this brisket's looking good. Last step of the process is we're just going to make sure that it is as aerodynamic as we possibly can. And we do that a really simple way. I'm sure we've all seen pitmasters and other YouTubers kind of take a knife and do one of these deals. Whoop, they bring it around. I've done that. I used to do that in the past because I thought it was cool and more efficient, but really, it takes a lot of volume to know exactly where you want to go on one swipe. So what I do now, which is the process that I really prefer and I love it, and it's just more fun to me, is I make triangles. Again, I talk about it in my masterclass in depth, but all you're gonna do is you're gonna create a triangle out of the two edges. So this is a triangle here. You see it? Triangle. And you're just gonna create a triangle and remove the triangles, and then you're gonna create many triangles all the way around until you round the edge off. And a common question is like, well, how do I know how far up to make my triangle? And you just wanna remove the lean that's too lean. When you buy a brisket, you're always gonna have one side of the lean that's thicker than the other. So we're gonna try to make the leanest side equal to the thickest side. That way it cooks more evenly. And the way that we do that is by finding where the thickness starts, if that makes any sense. So it starts to get thicker right about here. So that's where I'm going to remove this triangle because it's thicker on this side, and then moving back like this. Triangle. And then you're just gonna make many triangles, meaning here's a triangle right here. So I'm gonna remove this. And another one. And that's just how I like it. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Watch this start to come together. Now, this side's thicker, so I don't need to make as big of a triangle because it's already thick. I just want to do it to make it aerodynamic. And there you have it, folks. There's your brisket. Perfectly aerodynamic, nice and even, all around. Now the last step that you can do that I see a lot of people talk about is they say remove the membrane and the fat. In my humble opinion, this isn't the type of membrane that needs to be removed. The membrane that needs to be removed to me is the membrane that you find on like a beef rib. It's real tough and sinewy. This all will render out. All we really want to do is just take these big fat pockets that are on there and just remove that. I don't spend too much time on the back. Just get the real gnarly stuff. That way we can lay an even coat of rub. And I'm good with that.